Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the World Championship Series round of 16. We have one last group for the round of 16 before we move on to the round robin after a bit of a break. My name is Fear Dragon. I am joined here by Zombie Grub. Nice, bright and early in the morning for us. How's it going?
As always, it's going pretty all right.
Of course, guys, we got an awesome day of StarCraft to close things out for the round of 16 before we go, like I said, on about a month and a half long break for Katowice and WSG. All the players, of course, got places to go, tournaments to play in, but we still have a little bit more WCS Winter. If you guys aren't familiar with the format for WCS Winter, it's a pretty cool format in my opinion. 32 players managed to make it into this event, but we're down to just 16 players now in this current group stage. 8 more players are going to advance on to the round robin for the round of 8, and then from there, the top 6 from each region are going to be advancing on to a single elimination King of the Hill style format bracket that's seeded based on how they perform the round robin.
Yeah, at this point we have 6 people actually.
Yeah, we already know 6 of the 8 players in the round robin, that's true.
Yeah.
Of course, I think that some people with today's matches may say we know 7 of them.
Yeah, that's
one guy is so unbelievably good right now at StarCraft.
That's silly. How good can he be?
He is so good that some people are saying he is likely going to be taking first place with the $12,000 prize that comes with first place. Of course, it's $60,000 total for WCS Winter, so even if said individual Serral ends up taking first place, there's still plenty of money to go around, and of course that's $60K per region, and all the players that get knocked out today still walk away with $975.
I was gonna say we never actually said who it was. So it
I
took us
know.
a little while, but you all figured it out. You all knew.
Yeah. I feel like everyone that follows StarCraft at this point knows Serral is unbelievably good. He's 28-0 in his last match series and best of 3 pluses. And it would have been even longer, too, if it weren't for that dreaded knee taking 1 series off of him. He would have gone all the way back from October to February as a winning streak.
Literally silly kids ruining Rail. No, ruining Serral's master plan.
Indeed. Well, as mentioned before, it is going to be Serral facing off against Rail in that first match. After that, we're going into a Protoss versus Protoss of Gung Fu Banda versus Hearthstone. Zombie Grub, what are your thoughts on this group? How would you summarize your feelings on this one?
Serral gonna win.
Okay.
That's my feelings.
What about second place?
Protoss gonna win.
Wow. High level analysis from our analytical commentator Zombie Grub, guys. But again, Rail versus Serral going to be our first match. This is extremely tough for anyone that matches up against Serral. Of course, I know some people are sick of us talking about how good Serral is, but he actually is that good. It's to the point where the players themselves feel like, okay, let me just practice my Protoss versus Protoss, because the chances of me investing a ton of time into trying to come up with some special build to beat Serral, it's a lot lower than me just trying to beat the other Protoss players in this group.
He is so good that I don't care about everyone who says we tell him he's too good too often. I don't care. He's good. He's really good. And he's going to dominate EU. I know he said that about, like, for instance, Showtime, and then he almost gave us a heart attack there. But Serral is still at another level.
Yeah, Showtime is really good, but he has his ups and downs. Serral is so good that he actually just drops maybe 3-4 series a year at this point.
That is insane.
Like, think about that. And he's not avoiding StarCraft. He's not avoiding tournaments. He's playing in the online tournaments. He's playing in the offline tournaments. And he still only lost roughly like 4 or 5 series in the past year.
Yeah, that's pretty insane. That is including, you know, the last year's Katowice, which I guess where he, the last time he didn't actually win a championship. Wow, that's that really just gave Rail like 0 chance, didn't it?
So I'm happy to talk a little bit about Rail after we do these intros, because up here in the top left-hand corner of the map, we do have that blue Protoss player. He is Rail from Team Jera.
In the bottom right, as the red Zerg, he is Serral.
So Rail, I actually am a bit of a fan of, just because he's got a slightly weird playstyle that does throw people off oftentimes, and he's also one of those severe ladder grinders. He is constantly on the ladder grind, constantly playing so many more games than almost anyone else in the European region. It's kind of insane just to watch his win-loss record go up higher and higher on the ladder for the European server. So I know he's got a lot of practice, and I know that he also has some of his own little weird takes on builds that can catch people off guard. And funny enough, I feel like whenever we talk about Serral, like, it's not necessarily, if you want any remote chance of beating Serral, because remember, Serral has of course not lost series, but he's lost games before. This is a best of 3. This is the best chance that anyone has of beating Serral. And you also have to play not completely 100% standard against Serral, I think, to try and edge and win over him.
I would say that, yes, unless you are already one of the top players in the world, which Rail has not proven himself to be yet. I mean, if he beats Serral and gets out first in his group, then suddenly everything gets turned topsy-turvy. But yeah, plus it's like, yeah, he could play standard macro and just do his thing if that was his thing, and you just be like, oh, okay, like he's gonna try. But it's actually not his thing, as you said.
Yeah,
kind of plays a little differently. We saw a lot of aggressive tactics in his round of 32 group versus the Zerg players up against, which I can't remember right now. But yeah, he's probably gonna bring out the aggression versus Serral in an attempt to blindside him. But Serral, even with limited scouting, seems to always just have that one Ling, that one Overlord, something like that sees what's going on.
Yeah, I really want to know what Serral's going to be doing in this game as well, just because he kind of has stuff he can play with. A lot of Zerg players have been messing around with the Nice Worm. Rail has told me how much he really despises the Nidus Worm right now and how much trouble it's been given him. So we may even see Rail's build try to cater around the fact that he might get Nidus Worms, but Serral's also the kind of player that I could very well see not really go for any of those all-ins, not even say I need to take a chance, and just say, well, let me just win this clean, straight up in macro.
Yeah. Anytime that Serral like almost loses a game, it actually is the times where he's like, you know, I'll try an all-in.
You mean
here.
like that time he tried to proxy hatch Haas?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm talking about, yes.
Yeah,
so I think he's going to play the defensive macro Zerg, and he is already including Overlord speed here to make sure that he can scout everything.
Yep.
Something that I don't think he does all the time, or that he has to do all the time, but it is certainly the safer way to play when you're expecting, especially if you're expecting your opponent to be aggressive, trying to catch you off guard.
Yeah, and to clarify the kind of aggression that Rail does, it's not, he definitely does sometimes do like the 2-base flat out all-ins, but I would say a lot of the things that are weird about Rail, it's not crazy significant things like Haas, right? He's not just going to be saying, okay, I'm just going to make 40 oracles and go. Now, he'll usually do like slightly more subtle things. He'll make units or make weird push-outs at odd times. He'll have slightly weirder compositions, but not significantly different from the meta. So, of course, it's not something that I think Serral needs to react heavily different from or heavily different to. But it's something that having some extra scouting information allows him to just cater his own composition a little bit better.
I was wondering where those robos are going down. Serral is getting the full scout. At this point, actually, I think it's impossible for Rail to hide anything because Serral is just sending his Overlord constantly back in. There's not much to shoot it down right. Phoenix isn't even being bothered to be made here. And it is a double robo, which the Ling just scouts right now.
Yeah, kind of interesting that he doesn't bother going for any Phoenix just because I mean, the Phoenix are still nice for chasing back any Overlords, even if they do have speed, since Phoenix clearly move a lot faster. And there, he's finally going to go for Phoenix. So I guess just really wanted to get up the double robo a little faster instead.
Yeah, well, he's actually like, this was one of the faster third bases I've seen in a while, it feels like. You know, it was around that 330, just off the back of that Stargate and very limited gateway production. So prioritizing the maybe the robo production would be smart. So this is something that he's going to get away with, right? Serral's not, if this was Raynor, I think this would be a very bold choice. Raynor's already got 30 Lings ready to pounce something like this, but Serral, not so much, just reacting to what he's seeing.
Yep, and Hallucinate Phoenix being sent out across the map is going to give Rail his first real scout on kind of what Serral is up to. Is going to move in, possibly end up seeing that lair tech only just now finishing up. But no, actually doesn't make it further in. Sees one Evo chamber, and I think just barely may have missed the Hydra Den.
Yeah, the timing there I think was on purpose for Serral. Who, I mean, he's going to eventually show that's like Baneling.
I just realized, even though Rail went for the Oracle first and everything, Serral actually got away with only making 2 of the Spore Claws, which isn't a huge deal, but he got to skip one of the support calls just because Rail didn't actually go and get aggressive with it at all.
And it's totally something you can do. Like,
yeah.
The order of things really is like, you can get, by the time you need a third support crawl, you have a second queen there anyways, right? So unless they're going to do the Phoenix pickup and be bothersome. But you're right, like the Oracle just stayed at home. It wanted to protect the Nexus from any of those 16, 20-ish Ling type attacks, as there's one Adept otherwise, and that would not hold.
Fast Colossus is going to be coming out here for Rail. A lot of his defenses are going to be pinned around that, as we do have a decent number. Ooh, Oracle going down does suck. That is most of the scouting information for Rail, because he wants to save those force fields now for all the Lings and Hydras that are now out on the map.
Yeah, I don't believe this is the first time we've seen Rail go right into Colossus and double pump Colossus either. I think we saw him do it on year 0, in which it did result in a longer game, right? Like, in Serral, might have watched that game. I just know how Rail plays off the back of these two Robos, but he will also see that is Colossus soon enough, and he's going to have his own Spire and Infestation, but he's actually also going for Overlord drops here.
Yeah, going for the Overlord drops. We'll see if he ends up loading a bunch of these Hydras in, as I think that they're starting to move into different directions. So maybe he's just going to try and put on a little bit of harassment. We do have more gateways also finishing on up, +1 weapons. So Rail's kind of getting into his own groove with all of the upgrades, getting close to finishing up. And the Colossus count is about up to 2 right now. He did cut after Colossus production after 2 though.
Yeah, and I mean usually we see like it's like the rule was if you're gonna get 2, then you should get extended thermal lance, but then usually we see like maybe 3.
I thought 2 was like the thing that you wanted versus Terran, and then 3 was what you wanted versus Zerg. That's like the rule I always remember in the past.
And
for Hydras versus Marines, or I should say, yeah.
For Hydra. Oh, you mean what they're doing versus the unit? Yeah. I mean, I just feel like I've seen 3 so often, and then obviously some people actually do go up to the 4, but just stopping at 2 is all right.
Okay, well, the Baneling bombs are going to be coming into the main base and the third base at the same time. A couple Stalkers already getting warped in. A probe pull for most of the probes, and not actually even all of them. The third base also has a very quick probe pull, and Rail handling this pretty well so far.
Yeah, very well. I mean, he just seemed to actually even anticipate this happening, which is really nice.
Third base. Okay, you moved the Overlord back in for a second.
Yeah, well, the army was moving out, so it was a little scary. Natural's also going to be under threat. This is just constantly something he can do. The Phoenix is still alive, and now it's coming back. I guess it was out scouting because he lost that Oracle.
Yeah, this is so annoying. The natural expansion is where the Banelings finally end up unloading. 10 workers killed. And not only that, but you were saying the army was starting to kind of move a bit further forward. It has to pull back. The entire army for Rail is extremely on the defensive right now. He also didn't resaturate his main base right now, so we're starting to see even more workers killed.
16 in total. Not bad for something that was initially oh no. Okay, well that Stalker left a hole in the wall, and these are all injured probes because one Baneling did splash on a ton of them without that +2, so now it's 31 probes going down, and while Rail is on 4 at Nexus, he can replace those. This is just so much money to pump back in the economy.
This is really, really tough right now for Rail. This is extremely, extremely bad, as he's effectively all in now. And I don't know that he actually has an army to beat Serral.
I mean, I hesitate to say he's all in, but
if
now
he loses this 4th,
now as I say that, like, he could try and play out the slow game even after losing so much economy. But no matter how you spin it, it's a terrible situation. Serral probably would win in a fight with all this creep spread, with all this room to maneuver.
Well, Baneling's kind of off on their own. Okay, they do end up pulling back as they kill off the 4th base. Serral has a lot of creep spread, like you said, and that Greater Spire is also finished up. With so many Corruptors out, he can go into Broodlords if he feels comfortable with it. I don't think that these Stalkers ever got Blink or anything, so there's not really going to be much of an answer to the Broodlords.
Yeah, currently kind of evenish upgrades. Lots of Banelings coming in. Corruptors were made. They're going to help out take out the Colossus, even with the War Prism trying to micro here. It doesn't even do it successfully, and Rail just taps out.
Serral dominates the first game of today with just really solid normal stuff, and then the Baneling drops, which he pokes in with like 4 or 5 times, and Rail has a really good defense the first 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
And then the last couple of times, suddenly everything falls apart.
That's why they keep, telling you to persevere, man. Eventually you're going to get that Baneling bomb in this case.
It's tough because Serral it's not necessarily that people make big mistakes versus Serral immediately, but he's just will consistently test you over and over and over again. And as soon as you find the crack, suddenly it feels like the game just slipped out of your fingers entirely.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is what really differentiates people that are, you know, okay at StarCraft and super duper good, is that they're able to test consistently and have the mindfulness to both macro, micro, and constantly test and move their army and not like just. It's a ton of stuff, and with Serral's insistence, it is eventually going to find a weakness. It just was one of those. It was a snowball weakness. It was like, you know, the 15 probes, like, it's not that big of a deal. And suddenly it's 32 probes, and you're 4th base, and you're dead.
Yeah. We ended up seeing Rail try to go into that 4th base and just play a big macro ball of Immortals and a couple Colossus mixed in, getting up the charge upgrades and everything. Is that something you want to see again? Because that wasn't what I was necessarily expecting Rail to try and go for.
Yeah, we were pinning him up to be, you know, more aggressive. I was certainly expecting at least somewhat of a false push, you know, just to be like, oh, I'm so scary. Here's some creep spread.
He didn't try to put any aggression on Serral at all.
No, he didn't. And sometimes when we do see those Colossus, they, you know, if they have force fields, if they have recall, they do feel a little confident poking out and at least scaring the Zerg player. And there was none of that. Rail was just like, no, we're both going to macro. And to his credit, they did for like 10 minutes, and then just within the span of 30 seconds, it all disappeared. So that would crack my confidence. I don't know what Rail's thinking, but yeah, the might be time to go back to some aggression.
Okay, we're going to find out what Rail decides to do on year 0 for map number 2. I think we're just waiting on the ready from him. But yeah, guys, this is just the first series of the day, and a reminder that, of course, there are 2 other Protoss players in this group, and I think Rail does have some pretty funny PvP that has thrown a lot of people for a loop before, so he may be pinning some of his hopes there. Serral, pretty tough opponent to beat.
Yeah. I think all the Protoss in this group actually, if I'm not mistaken, have like the highest win record is their PvP. Like they're all the most comfortable in that. And it's not just because they're facing Serral, but also maybe some other thoughts from them about the Zerg versus Protoss matchup.
Yeah, as mentioned from Rail, not feeling so great about Nidus Worms, which never even were made in that last game.
Yeah, I can't blame that time, man. Just, you know, just gotta blame Serral's amazing creep spread and constant insistence with Ling run buys and his Baneling drops, and you can blame all those things.
Yeah.
Just not Nidus.
You know, just Serral being a perfect human being. That's a fair one to blame. But guys, we're going to be starting up here at the top left-hand corner of the map, top of the blue Protoss player from Team Jira. He is Rail.
In the top right, from ENCE Esports, it is the Red Zerg, Serral.
Okay, well, in this game, we're going to see what Rail decides to bust out. It is still a tough spot when you're already sitting down 0-1. The funny thing about Serral and facing off versus Serral is that you can impress people by taking a map off of him.
Yeah.
He's hit that level of amazingness that if you take a map off of him, people will remember that you took a map off of him.
Yeah. Well, I think what adds to that is just that how many times we've seen Serral not scout and all in and yet still, like, sort of defend, right?
Yeah, that part kind of disgusts me.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. But it means that a map actually does mean a lot as opposed to some other people who might be like, you know, it was an all in, like, who cares? Like, no, it actually, even when you get a, you know, the fastest charge all in possible, and he has no roaches whatsoever, yet somehow he still wins.
I'm trying to remember. I'm calling back to one of the games I saw, specifically of that charge lot all in that I saw a pro player do, and he was up to like 70-something drones or something.
Oh, well, that's insane.
He had like 60 or 65, 65 or close to 70 drones, and he still holds when he had no idea it was coming.
You might be thinking of the same one I am, which is the Nation Wars match.
That might have been it.
After the amazing, like,
it was just disgusting,
super big macro game, and then Showtime gets the perfect idea to do a charge all in, and Sarah's like, you know what? I'm still gonna win.
I'm like, when are we gonna get it added to the WCS rulebook that you can't be that good?
Yeah. Well, when you start to region lock Finland.
Poor Zugli Yang is like, no, but I'm still here too, and I'm not as good at Serral.
Yeah. Anyway, so, you know, I mentioned this map actually when I said that Rail has done that really fast into two Colossus before, and I think it was this map, or a very similarly minded build where he went into that super late game super quickly. We might see it again. I mean, if he does do the same thing, in his defense, he's probably thinking, well, I won't not leave the stalker there, and then I'll lose 16 less probes and be in position for my fourth base, and that would be the case.
Yeah, it's a fair way of thinking about things. Of course, if there is just some positional thing that causes you to lose that game, then you can say, well, I'll just fix that positional thing. I don't have to change up my entire build. We'll see what he decides to do. Of course, this is a bit of a different map. The layout's a little bit different. That might allow for some other kind of shenanigans or tactics from Rail. It's sort of funny also just watching Serral when he's in these kind of series where he is heavily favored. Because I think a lot of people, they look at Serral and they say, okay, whatever this guy is doing is probably what Zerg players should be doing. Because he's the best in the world right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you look at him and you're like, well, he's just doing pretty much what we already knew you had to do, but he's just doing it so much better than everyone else that I don't really feel like I don't know if I'm learning a lot right now. Can I actually just play that well? Can I do these run-bys and have that high APM and also get my creep spread going and everything else?
He would love to see the gas timings exactly, as well as any potential tech back here, but Serral does not. Rail is changing things up, not going for that fast third, which at least the Ling sees.
Yep,
but
gets up second Stargate.
As far as the follow-up second Stargates, that is still a little bit in question, whether it's that or maybe like an Archon drop or something. And well, we see that. We see it's Phoenix.
Yeah, and you can see that Serral's still just making a bunch more Lings, which might be useful for trying to deny a third base or something, but it's likely he was just making these to try and deal with any Adepts or anything that would be running across the map, trying to get some scouting information, picking off some drones. Hallucinating Phoenix makes its way from the third to the natural. Doesn't see a whole lot outside of a few of the Lings that were made.
So last game, Serral waited as long as he could, really, to start his techs, to start his army, as Zerg players should. And he went into a Hydralisk Den and then a Baneling Nest. This game, he is going to be going into a Roach Warren. When he figures out what's going on, maybe he won't actually make those Roaches, right? You're supposed to be waiting the longest time possible before you do that, but now he sees that his double Phoenix cleaning up his Overlords. And what is his reaction to that?
Well, first going to start off with throwing down a second Spore Crawler in that main base. One of the Queens gets picked off. The second Queen gets lifted up, but he gets a Phoenix in exchange for it, which is not a terrible trade. Softens up another Phoenix, and Rail has to retreat on out. So far, just getting Queens.
Yeah, but 2 Queens, not too shabby. It would have been better for sure not to lose that Phoenix. Just good focus fire from our Zerg player, who's adding on even more Spore Crawlers, replacing the Queens that he lost. Still targeting firing the weak Phoenix, I believe. So another one bites the dust.
And it's really important when you're going for these Phoenix styles that you want to keep those Phoenix alive. It's all about just getting such a ridiculous number that you can dive in later on in the game and get not only some kind of scouting information, but you pick off a bunch of drones left and right, even though there are Spore Crawlers there, just because you have so many Phoenix. So you end up losing a lot of them. They're hard to replace.
Serral's Ling is doing a nice job seeing exactly how much Rail is trying to dedicate to these double Stargates. And now the production has stopped, as we can see, and Serral will shortly realize that. He decided to stick on Roaches, by the way, investing into the Roach speed, but he's not getting an upgrade despite having an Evolution Chamber. Okay, there we go. I was like, but he's droning, so it's not like he's going to do an attack. But all right, there's the upgrade. Just enough Roaches to safeguard him, I suppose, against anything else that might come forward, like if there's a lot of Adepts. In this case, we see that there is not. Not really, just actually a lot of Zealots.
Yep, Phoenix continuing to poke back and forth, and the third base finally coming up here for Rail. And when you go for the double Stargate, it does kind of delay things to try and go for that expansion quite as early, especially if you're losing a bunch of those Phoenix and you have to replace them. But there's the Robo, there's the Twilight Count, or second Robo, and there's the Twilight Council.
Tried to predict the Overseer. I was wrong. Yeah, the Overseer sees everything, so I think one of the things you would be looking for is any of those surprise swap into, for instance, Colossus again. In this case, not going to be the case. We do have a second Robo. That is just the usual production we would expect from our Protoss in most games. These Phoenix not really finding much else to do, right? Like, they haven't had any more Queen snipes or drone snipes. There's been so many Spore Crawlers put down. They have to be careful every single time. There's a few more, but then almost loses a Phoenix for it.
Yeah, Liz gets out of there without losing any Phoenix this time. 3 workers killed, even if that Phoenix is a little bit lower in hit points. We got a Hive and a Spire on the way, though. Serral has been up to 76 drones. He is been in a really, really good spot to just kind of get up everything he sort of wants. And the Phoenix have done some light harassment, but Serral is putting on his own pressure right now. The Immortals should be able to push this back pretty easily, but forced out a lot of force fields. I think picked off a sentry or two there.
Yeah. Yeah, it didn't seem like it was going to do very much, but it was trying to catch Rail out of position, and it did, you know, it almost got 2 sentries, which would have been nicer. Yeah. Most of the Roaches get away. They're pretty cheap anyways. The Serral is on to bigger and better things here. He's got so much tech. He's got the Hive on the way, but also adding a Baneling Nest, swapping over in a lot of Hydras, not going full force into Roaches, which obviously wouldn't do very well against the Phoenix anyways. And it's going into that later PDZ, but this time Rail actually did something, a little bit of something to try and mess Serral up.
Yeah, I think Rail's not in a terrible spot right now, but he also still has not scouted out that the Hive is already on the way. I don't know if he's actually scouted out the Infestation Pit. No, he never actually saw the Infestation Pit either. So I don't know if Rail's going to be seeing this quick Hive Tech and Spire coming with the Greater Spire likely starting up, and there it is. And I am a little bit worried. Sure, double Stargate does mean that you can quickly start transferring over into an answer to the Broodlords. You can throw down your Fleet Beacon, you can get up Tempest really quickly if you need to. But he's not really going back into the main base. He's not really getting that scouting information right now.
He's taking care of the Xel'Naga, which is really not that important in this game anyways. That is certainly worrying. The lack of a Fleet Beacon started is really the worst thing here. As you said, it's an easy enough, like if you can buy any amount of time whatsoever, then you can probably get to at least a couple Tempests, literally a couple, or Cures, whatever you want to do. But that would not be very convincing defense. That would be still very scary.
Catching a bunch of these Banelings is nice, and I like that Rail is going for his big timing. If he can hit this timing and hit right as the Greater Spire is still finishing up, it won't actually matter that much that the Greater Spire is on the way, but he needs to be able to make this engagement happen. He's going deep onto creep. He's not going to have time to wait for the creep to recede. Baneling's going off on just a handful of the Zealots. A lot of the Zealots sitting in the back actually splitting up that Baneling damage, and so far this engagement not going so poorly for Rail.
It's not so bad. Queen's helping out here as much as they possibly can. More Banelings rolling in, popping a lot of those hardened shields, but so many of the Immortals still alive. Where are the reinforcements coming in from? A Warp Prism from quite far away, but this might be enough. Serral taps out.
And Rail takes a game off of Serral. Really well done, and it's exactly what we're saying. It's that timing, specifically right before the Greater Spire finishes up. Whether he scouted it or not, if your idea is to just hit that exact timing, he hits it perfectly. Maybe like 20 seconds before Broodlords could have been morphed in and caused him a lot of trouble.
Yeah, and it was one of those difficult decisions for the Zerg player to have room to make Corruptors and Broodlords or have the maxed out army, which even the maxed out army, as he was close to maxed out, might not have taken on such a Protoss army.
Yeah, I really like the way that there were small things that Rail was doing in that fight as well. His Zealots were actually pretty staggered. And usually, if you just have all your Zealots at the front line, then the Banelings come rolling on in, suddenly you just lose all of your Zealots, you lose your frontline buffer. The Archons are the first thing they get target fired down by the Hydras, and then the Immortals are going to have no meat shield. But because the Zealots were so staggered, they were kind of individually going in, the Banelings weren't getting amazing splash damage trades, and that really helped out Rail a lot in that fight.
It absolutely did. Otherwise, Serral had the concave. Serral did have an army somewhat prepared, but it was definitely a little bit of a underpreparedness, not having the Banelings done, not having a back attack or something like that set up, and that was just perfectly timed. Well done, Rail. Catches Serral being a little bit too greedy. You know, we were talking about how Rail wasn't being the aggressive one, but now as we are at 1-1, we have to talk about how Serral's not doing very much. There's a few Roaches to try and get a sentry, and then not really anything else. Whereas other Zerg players are doing a bunch of drops, they're doing those timings with Hydras.
Yeah, both these players, for the most part, playing pretty passive until they really decide to go for the big attack, at least in that last game. Of course, we saw Serral going for some of the Baneling drops and stuff in the first game, but we'll see if Serral decides to switch it up. It's a little harder to be quite as aggressive with Baneling drops and stuff when you're up against double Stargate, but definitely would love to see a little more Ling run-bys and all that kind of stuff in the next game.
Yeah, We are on Kairos Junction for the ace match. In the top left, as the blue Protoss, it is Rail.
And down here in the bottom right-hand corner of the map, the man with a 28-game best-of-3+ winning streak, he is Serral, Team Ents. 1 game away from that streak winning, or going away for a bit.
Yeah, that winning streak
Yeah.
turning into a losing.
A losing streak of 1?
Yeah, losing streak of 1. I was like, that doesn't work. Well, maybe it does turn into a losing streak. Serral's confidence crumbles, and he loses the rest of the matches. It seems pretty like.
What happens when a genius loses and they realize that they are fallible?
Yes. Yeah, you know, that last game, Rail didn't actually go for Storm, did he?
No, he didn't.
Yeah.
And I think it was smart of him because he would not have actually had time to handle things if he had, in fact, gone for a Storm in that situation, just because he would have missed that timing. The Broodlords would have been out, and it would have become a much, much more difficult game there for Rail. But I kind of like it. I like the fact that he's able to hit these little narrow windows of time that Serral's a little bit more vulnerable. I wonder if Serral's going to play it a little bit closer to the chest this game, if he's going to attack up a tad bit slower. It's kind of funny. I'm not used to seeing a Protoss player sit as defensively and just be so willing to not really put on a lot of pressure. Even the Phoenix, again, they killed off a few things here and there, but they didn't actually kill a ton of drones. They weren't diving into the main base for such a long time that they didn't actually see the Spire or the Infestation Pit or the Hive even going up. Yeah,
there was a lot of potential bad information being told, but I think that Rail did have a strong idea as how Seral was going to play.
Yeah.
What the timing of that high was going to be based off the first game, and just had that attack in mind that was so well timed. I do wonder if he's going to do that again, though. Like, Serral should be mixing up his play style. That is, he's a champion not because he's just good defensively, is that he can mix things up, go for more maybe aggression in the mid to late game. You know, when he's maxed out first on the Hydraling, Baneling, actually bringing it to Rail a little bit.
Yep. By the way, Adept finding one of the Lings going to make its way forward. Remember, there were only 4 Lings made earlier, so that does mean the Adept can maybe poke a little bit further forward into the main base. Just get some basic scouting information and maybe pick off a drone or two, since there aren't that many Lings out. But Queen's going to force him back. He scouts out the 3rd, confirms he's not getting 2 base all in.
Yeah.
Probably going to be content to just retreat back home.
Yeah, I want to keep that Adept alive a little longer. Not just really checking the 3rd base, but checking if there are a lot of Lings on the way, right?
Yeah, I like that Rail keeps mixing up his openings just a little bit here and there. So, I mean, the first game, he goes for the Stargate opening, but goes to just an Oracle and doesn't get the Phoenix for a really long time. And then in the second game, he ends up going for double Stargate with a single Oracle. Or sorry, no, it goes for Phoenix first, I think, in that game. And this game is going for Phoenix Oracle again, but adds on a Robo.
Yeah. Yeah, he was specifically waiting for the Overlord to die. Terrible death before slapping down that Robo. And 1 more Gateways as well. Oh boy. Serral reacting to the Stargate appropriately, getting those extra queens to safeguard his 3rd base. Actually, his natural is the one he chose not to put a Spore Crawler on, and that does make sense.
Yeah, I think that's what he did in the other game, the first game that the Oracle came in, and
yeah.
Oracle and the Phoenix are going to be joining forces, and this is where maybe it could have found some damage there. He's going to make his way over to the main base, but sees that Spore Crawler, sees the Queens are still chasing him, decides to back off, but a lot of gateways being added on.
Yeah, I think Rail showed the same all-in in his previous matches, and is Serral going to be able to tell that it's coming?
Well, I mean, he lost the Overlord after the Phoenix killed it off, and he is not going to have an easy time getting any additional scouting information on those extra gas geysers. The other Overlords, of course, are nowhere nearby, so it's going to be a pretty difficult all-in to scout immediately, especially with Rail doing a good job selling the 3rd base going up here.
He's going to take a 3rd base, but I don't know how much he's really going to drone it, or probe it in this case, sorry. The Roach count of 5, maybe going up to 9 again. He did do that last game and then didn't really do too much with them. It felt like it was very safe, but he also started +1 and he had the lair on the way. In this game he doesn't, so maybe it's a lot more than 9 roaches. There we go. A lot earlier on too.
I don't even know what Serral is reading into this game. He has just got such a good read on Rail. I don't know what he saw that has tipped him off. But he produced, he's making roaches so much earlier.
Yeah, I think the army moved out a little bit to a Ling, and that's what tipped him off. But yes, this was a canceled 3rd. This doesn't have any Immortals, just the War Prism. But if it was to find Serral at like 55 drones, and Serral's probably dead, but Serral started making units so so appropriately timed.
Yeah, this just gets completely smacked down because it's so hard in this situation to make it work. The Warp Prism is not going to have any time to situate itself up and start warping in again. He just loads up the expensive units and just taps out. GG's Serral, 2-1. Advances on to the winner's bracket.
Yeah, he might have been purposefully holding on to minerals, gas, and larva for that timing that he was like looking out for. If so, that's amazing, and I can certainly see him doing that. But he was totally prepared, totally.
Yeah, really would love to watch that replay again and just see the exact thing that tipped him off. Because I thought he started producing roaches before the move out, but you might be right. It may have just been the move out and reacting just in time.
Well, you know, if he's making 6 roaches just defensively, like in the second game,
yeah.
and then he sees something and he's going to be like,
And
oh,
he
more
just makes
roaches,
more roaches.
more.
That's fair. But either way, Rail tries a bit of an all-in build there, doesn't end up working out, and Serral ends up advancing on. I'm sure that Rail is not going to be too heartbroken, as pretty sure in this group anyone looks at this and says, okay, let me practice my Protoss versus Protoss. If I can get something off of Serral, that's awesome. But if not, that's kind of what we were expecting.
Yeah, a lot of focus probably going down on the PvP in this group.
But cool for Serral. He's going to be moving on to that winner's bracket, keeping that winning streak going. He's up to 29 best of 3s won in a row now. And of course, our next match is going to be one of those Protoss versus Protosses. Gung Fu Banda, man who made it out first in his group, facing off against Harstem. Big fan favorite. This is one you don't want to miss.